People everywhere are starting to listen to him. He's going on French, British, Italian, Japanese television.
This is the wide world of Weingarten.
Welcome back. The wide world of Weingarten. It is February 23rd, Wednesday. There was some Champions League earlier today. That was about the most exciting thing I saw on the betting card today. Can't say I have much to bet. I looked around. I think I added Chase Young 10-1 at the Honda Classic. Sorry, 5-1 at the Honda Classic top 10. But other than that, just not much going on a Wednesday betting wise. This time of year, a lot of people are off or taking vacations, getting ready for baseball season, what have you. Post football sort of cool down. I'm still here cranking away at stuff. But since I didn't have anything to bet today, I thought I would just go through questions that people had, because I know a lot of people wanted to ask stuff, and I had done this before. It was cool, so I thought I'd do it again. I haven't done it in a while. So the first question, Jockstein asks, your thoughts on MLB division winners would be solid. So a couple prices I was able to bet last week offshore. I bet the Blue Jays to win the AL East plus 250, the Astros even plus 100, Brewers NL Central plus 150, Padres to win the NL West plus 325, which is interesting because if you listen to me last year, I'm a notorious Padres hater. I just think plus 325 was a huge number. I don't think there's much value on the Giants. It's a 3-team race. You can either lay money on the Dodgers or pick a winner besides them at a bigger number. And I thought 325 plus 325 on the Padres was a nice stab there. So surprising. I didn't expect to be on the Padres, but I am. Those are all like $500 bets or less. I had to bet these $100 at a time at one book, and I think I was able to get 1,000 at another, but I had to split it. And it's tough shopping for numbers right now, but they're coming out, and some are better than others. I was able to get these offshore. The next question comes from Butterknife Bets, who asks, what is my favorite MLB World Series future, and what is my golf process? Do I model each tournament? So the first part of that, the only future I bet so far is the Brewers 15-1, but I typically bet more on pennant futures than World Series. I don't have any pennant futures yet either. Same goes for the Super Bowl. I bet on NFL conference futures more. I rather pick the participants of the World Series or the Super Bowl, whatever final game we're talking about, than pick the winner necessarily of that game, because you can cash your pennant future on the front end and you can reinvest that money in the World Series, as opposed to having to sweat out. Like if you had the Bengals in the Super Bowl this year, you had a great bet, but you still had to kind of figure out a hedge in the final leg. I'd rather cash the Bengals to win the AFC, take a big win there, and be able to put it on the Super Bowl however I feel. So Brewers is what I got there, but not a huge bet yet. Just building a small position as I bets. Then what's my golf process? Do I model each tournament? I do not model each tournament. I do keep track of guys. Basically, I am not a supreme expert golf modeler, handicapper. I like betting golf. I think it's fun. I tend to make more money than I lose on it, but you can go several weeks with bad results, and you could live bet yourself into some holes as well. My process typically is I focus on a handful of guys, and I, like if you've been listening to me, I talk about Sashit Thagala, Maverick McNeely's a guy that I've been following for a while now, but I have a handful of guys, and I typically bet on them and hope that my handful of guys come through. It's also a reason why I like playing, is because I get to put my guys in a lineup with some of the favorites or some of the stronger guys, and you can use a lineup cruncher, whatever it's called, it's fantasy cruncher now or whatever, to kind of spit out a whole bunch of lineups with lower price guys you like. But I don't model. I do keep track of stats and Excel kind of stuff. But I'm not. There's far better golf modelers out there than me on Twitter. Publicly available. I'm just a guy who likes to bet on golf. Elf Ringo, best practices for keeping track of wagers using one spreadsheet or having multiple spreadsheets based on sport type of wager. Multiple spreadsheets broken down by sport type of wager is definitely the way to go. For example, record keeping for first innings or hits, runs, error props I would do separately from sides and totals. Sometimes it is interesting to look at stuff on a daily basis if you can kind of parse the information like that and just see what your day-to-day sort of numbers look like. But typically I keep different sheets for different types of bets. But there's a lot of people who are far more anal about record keeping than I am, and I totally understand that more data points means better data, and you can analyze what you're doing right or wrong. But for me, I personally try to keep as little on paper as possible. I could do a lot of stuff in my head, not to say that that's the best place to do it or that you can't, but I just keep track. I know if I'm up or down, where I'm at, more or less in my head. But if I'm off by a couple thousand or 10,000 or whatever in the middle of the week, I'm okay with that. I know some people want to know down to the penny exactly what they're up or down, but I think sometimes knowing the exact number can sometimes be detrimental because you get too involved in the swings and you're like, oh, I lost that, I should have won that, now I gotta bet more on this, and you start not staying level-headed. So it can mess with your head. And something I learned about record keeping from someone else is that you don't have to record your results in the same day. So sometimes, like, I'll go back and look at stuff from 2-3 days, before, and I'll tabulate it. But giving myself 2 or 3 days to go back and look at something, I might stay a little more level-headed and be able to approach it and see what I did right or wrong better. But if you have to keep records, it's just you got to keep records. Do it however you like. But my advice is it's about how you keep it and how you do it more than what you're keeping in it. But obviously, more data points means better data. So it really depends on what you're planning on doing with your own data. Personally, I think less records the better, but you can decide on your own how you think, that kind of stuff. Dimitri had a really good question. He asked, when he signs with a team, what do I think of Saya Suzuki's Rookie of the Year odds? What do I think they'll be priced at? That's a great question. If you don't know who Suzuki is, he's a 4-time Japanese baseball all-star, outfielder, 2-time Japanese batting champ. Hits a lot of home runs. Post-lockout, Suzuki's going to be competing for free agency dollars and starting an outfield spot with guys like Michael Conforto and Nick Castellanos, who are still on the market. I would obviously expect Conforto and Castellanos to get more money and more attention than Suzuki, but Suzuki is a absolutely fine consolation for a team that misses out on Conforto or Castellanos. He hit 38 home runs in Japan season, which is a lot. His OPS was over 1,000, and he'll be entering his 27-year-old season in 2022. So he's right in the middle of his prime. Could definitely slot in and play outfield for a bunch of contenders. Obviously, I don't expect 38 home runs to carry over from Japanese pitching. But the problem is with the lockout and visas and getting guys into camp on time from out of the country, I'm not 100% that he's going to sign and be ready to go when the season starts, whenever that might be. He might end up being a victim of the circumstances of the lockout. But he's indicated that he's willing to wait out the lockout, and there's no deadline. He hasn't imposed a deadline for him to go back to Japan. And with the Japanese season set to get underway before the MLB lockout ends, it does look like he is holding out for an MLB contract. But if I was betting on it, I'd say he is going to sign with an MLB team. So I looked up his Zips projections for 2022, and they have him at 287, average 351, 480 for the other slash lines. In 529 at bats, he'll have 81 runs, 23 home runs, 85 RBIs, 124 OPS plus, a 2.6 WAR. So you compare those numbers to Randy Rosarena last year, who won the Rookie of the Year in the AL. He had also exactly 529 at bats, put up 94 runs, 20 home runs, 69 RBIs, with a 131 OPS plus, a 3.3 WAR, so not very far off his Zips projection for Suzuki. Jonathan India, also similar, 532 at bats, 98, 21, 69 with a 113 OPS plus, 3.9 WAR. Full WAR, full 1.3 WAR over Suzuki. So yeah, based on that, I would definitely say he's probably going to slot in at 10-1, 12-1 max if you're lucky when he when he signs, assuming he's going to be an everyday starter. The markets though haven't been kind the last couple of years to Japanese imports. Not Suzuki, Shogo Akiyama, Yoshi Satsugo were both kind of guys who never really got off the ground in their rookie seasons. A couple other guys, have come through recently. Their names are not on the top of my head at the moment, but I can't think of a bunch of guys who have particularly succeeded versus the guys who have been average or less. Also, the big obstacle in his way potentially is going to be O'Neal Cruz. I looked up his Zips projection. The problem is the projections that I was looking at online have Cruz around 361 at bats, still hitting 17 home runs, but 361 at bats has him around 80 games. I think he's going to play closer to 140. As far as I know, last I heard, they weren't planning on starting him back in the minors. If they did, I would be surprised if that didn't trigger a grievance if that's a thing post lockout. But I think some of these projections are really low, and even the bat and streamers all have them between 112 and 117 games. Rasball was a little higher at 120. I think Rasball is pretty accurate, but 120 games would give O'Neal Cruz 456 at bats. Put him up to about 20 home runs. So, I mean, I do think Suzuki is going to be a top tier contender, but it depends where he signs. If he signs in the National League, and I for some reason I think I hear him connected to National League teams more on the West Coast. But a team like the Giants, he can create a problem where he's splitting both votes with Joey Bart, who's one of the favorites, and Camilo Doval, who's also going to be the closer. So his odds are also going to have to reflect where he signs, not just how many at-bats he's getting. I would say 10-1 is probably reasonable. I wouldn't put him too higher than any number that Randy was last season, but I'm also not confident that he's as good as Randy Rosarena. So that's my answer there. That was a good question though. Andrew Potter asks, I am bullish on sports gambling companies. Am I bullish on any sports gambling companies? Yes, I'm bullish on Fanatics. They're a privately owned company right now. I assume they're going to eventually raise money, go public, probably by the end of this year. Can't invest in them yet. Endeavor is public. I think they're interesting. They're kind of creating this sports conglomerate made up of several unique pieces. They've recently got into minor league baseball. They own 6 AAA teams, which, there's only 30 of them. So they've already come in and taken over 20% of AAA baseball, and they've bought the marquee franchises, the Oklahoma Dodgers, the Yankees affiliate in Scranton, the Gwinnett Braves. They also own the UFC, the William Morris Talent Agent, and they bought the Open Bet platform from Scientific Games, which includes Don Best, the subscription service that's as expensive as basically leasing a mid-sized BMW or a nice mid-sized German car each month. So they own a whole bunch of interesting stuff. I'm interested in Endeavor. I own some Endeavor. The actual sportsbooks companies right now, I think it's not the best time to be investing in any of these companies. unless you find one you like that has zero debt, Bet Rivers, the Rush Street, I think Rush RSI is what it's called. They're a zero debt book, which is interesting. In this environment, I'm definitely looking at books that don't have debt as compared to the ones that are burning just cash at breakneck speed right now. You saw Caesars had their earnings yesterday, and they said they're immediately ceasing all marketing because they spent so much money on those stupid JB Smoove commercials. They weren't working out. So I think you're definitely going to see the smarter books pull back on ad spend right now, and that makes me like the books that are already operating and acquiring customers without huge ad spend. So Rush Street is one I like. I think they're an acquisition target. I think they're, as far as acquisition targets go, I think they're the best. But as far as bigger names go, like I said, Endeavor is building a very interesting conglomerate. Then Mateo, also known as my old college roommate, wants to know, when was the last time I watched an episode of Deadliest Catch? And sadly, it has been far too long. Gotta find out what the Hillstrom brothers and Sig are up to these days. Yeah, I kind of started slacking on that. I don't even know, is the show still on? Are they still crab fishing up there? I tried to get my girlfriend to watch it a couple times. She didn't quite like it. I tried to get her to watch what's it called, the Gold Rush show we used to watch with Parker Schnovel and the Schnovels and the idiot who they can never find gold for 4th-season Gold Rush. Tried to watch that too. She didn't like it. So yeah, sorry. We kind of stopped watching those shows, but they're great. We're watching 90 Day Fiance now. That's the new one. It's the best thing on TV. It makes you feel so good about yourself after a bad day of gambling. D negative asks, do you need to have PPH accounts to be profitable, to be a profitable sports bettor, or are offshore books and legals enough? Interesting question, D negative. Well, so the key is you got to work with what you have. If you only have offshores, then you work with offshores. You learn how to beat the offshores. If you only have legal books, then you learn how to take advantage of the bonuses and you beat the legal books. If you only have PPH accounts, then you learn the tricks to beating those PPH accounts. But it's really dependent on what you have access to. You can be a winning bettor at any type of book. You just have to approach that book in a specific manner and know what you're getting into. So I think with PPH accounts, the thing to keep in mind is you have to trust the person on the other end, and a lot of times you might be able to win a couple $1,000, but a PPH account, a real bookie that'll pay you and that you can have a real relationship with, and it goes both ways obviously, but those relationships are worth their weight in gold, and I find they don't exist as much anymore for various different reasons. But if you can find good PPH accounts, I suggest you send them my way. But if you're looking for them for yourself, obviously that's what your question's intending. But you don't need them. But there are absolutely positives to having them, and you just have to understand the difference between credit and post-up betting, and you can do both at the same time, but they do, in my opinion at least, require different mindsets to succeed at. So you have to know what to bet at what book, at what price, etc. All sorts of things to keep in mind. Hand jobs for Ewoks asks, and let me tell you, this guy follows me on Twitter. I think I actually do know his real name, but his Twitter handle, hand jobs for Ewoks, is by far like a Hall of Fame social media handle, and I just, every time I see it makes me laugh. But is it Mr. Ewoks or Mr. Handjobs, or what am I supposed to call this guy? I go with Mr. Ewoks in my head. But he asked, did I ever meet or interact with Groovin' Mahooven? Did I meet him? No, I never met him. I almost met him. Me and him and my friend Brian had planned to go to the AFC Championship game at Foxborough if the Steelers had won the second round of the playoffs and they did not, and then he died. So we never got to meet, but I did interact with him frequently, not on like a daily basis, but I'd say pretty often. Like, we would talk about stuff, especially you never know when he'd hit you up in the middle of the night with, I assume he'd be up wired on coke and wanted someone to talk to. But yeah, he was really good at answering questions about technical stuff. I was able to ask him stuff and learn a lot about baseball and baseball betting and numbers that I didn't necessarily understand or have anybody to teach me. And so, I mean, his influence is still very, very broadly felt, not just by me, but like even before the Super Bowl this year, I was having lunch with some people in LA, and one of my friends brought up an angle that Grooven had taught him that he plans to incorporate this baseball season. And if you're wondering what that angle is, I can't say because it's not my story to tell, but So that's just an example of how stuff that he taught people, not just me, but other people are still using that stuff today. 4 years almost, was it 4 years later, I think, since he died. So yeah, that was cool. But no, I never got to meet him. Unfortunately, I did get to talk to him frequently though. And then Ryan Copa asks, have I bet any NCAA baseball futures? No, I'm 0-1, betting the game straight up. I don't feel like I really need to get into this market with the amount of golf betting available right now, and with minor league baseball coming up. Let's see, what else? I didn't get a name for whoever asked this question, but it said, do I do anything with pitcher K props? Any thoughts on what to look for? Do I use spin rate or velocity to see if a pitcher is fatigued or not? I do bet strikeout props, but it's the kind of thing that you have low limits on, and right now I don't have a bunch of accounts that I could bet more than $500 on strikeout props without, burning them in a week or two. And strikeout props are the kind of thing, like if you bet too many props in an account, you don't give them action on other stuff, you'll get shut down pretty quick. And at this point, I've burned through so many accounts that the accounts I do get, I value more than, pummeling with strikeout props for the most part. So like, I'll bet $500 on a strikeout prop, or if I have some books I know, let me bet $100 or $250. I'll bet them and know that I'm not gonna lose. I'm not gonna lose the account over it. But you could totally make decent money at $500 pop. If you have 5 accounts, you bet that 5 times, scale it up even a little higher than that. You can make a lot of money on soft strikeout props, but you're going to lose those accounts. You're not going to get a whole season out of it. You might get 2 weeks or a month if you're lucky, but they're going to shut you off until you get lost with that action. So I've done that. I've played through that whole game years ago. But now I can bet them. I might play 1 or 2 and know that I'm not going to get shut down. But I won't go through the whole card and just handicap them and try to pummel a guy like I would if I was, I don't know, 10 years younger maybe. But K-props, they're a good place to start. If you're trying to fatten your bankroll, you get started with something, you don't have much to work with. The only drawback, like I said, there's so many people betting them. The books kind of know that you're doing it. They'll profile you. You won't last long if it's all you're betting. But it's even the thing is books have wised up, and it's like the lines aren't as egregious as they used to be either. But I look back like when Bovada had strikeout props, you were able to bet them for a couple $100. It was easy to make, $4,000, $5,000. And back when Bitcoin was still in the low 4 figures, you were able to make 1 or 2 Bitcoin off Bovada strikeout props. And I know people who held on to their 1 to 2 Bitcoin, from winning strikeout props way back when, and all of a sudden one day had $100,000, or wow, we're like, wow, look at all that money I made from that. And so crazy things happen, but I've moved on from pummeling strikeout props. As for what I look for though when I'm betting them, just stuff that stands out obviously is stuff like strikeout to walk rate, the home run percent, hard hit rate, batted ball stats in general, exit velocity. You want to see if guys are getting hit hard. Then you can kind of just look at the pitch FX stuff to see if there's reasons behind why they're getting hit hard, or if you want to break down what they're throwing, you could totally break down what they're throwing. But a lot of that stuff, there's models that do that at this point. Also, definitely look at velocity charts, because those are easy to look at and spot stuff with. Parker Lewis asked my thoughts on Yordan Alvarez coming into the season. Well, he's still only 24, so it's hard to say we've already seen his best or his best season. I think his best is still in front of him. If his knees stay healthy, that's the big risk with Yordan Alvarez. Is he's already had knee problems. He took off 2020 to have knee surgeries. He was back last year, hit 33 home runs or whatever. And his historical comp is like Joe DiMaggio if he stays healthy. So that's really, really good. He's a 50 home run type upside, top of the home run list kind of guy. Only thing comes down to is his health. If he could stay healthy, if his knees go out, as soon as his knees go out, his power is gone. That's the big risk. And then can he win an MVP as a full-time DH? I'm not sure about that, but as long as he stays healthy, he's going to be an amazing guy in the middle of that lineup. And then Horace asks, my friend Horace says, when betting on international games between countries, how much weight should I put on the country's post-industrial war efforts versus pre-industrial? Great question. Should I back the French because of Napoleon's conquest, or fade them because of their porous Maginot Line? Okay, so my first question is, why is a Horace talking? Horace, wow, let's get that guy in the circus. But the actual answer is, I had to think about this for a while, but you always have to take historical rivalries into account, especially when handicapping, national soccer, World Cup. For example, like when Germany was playing Russia in the 2018 World Cup, I bet against them to advance out of the first round. I bet South Korea to beat them at a huge number, because I just felt like, Germany playing in Russia, the crowd was not going to be on their side. The refs might not be on their side. That you don't know what's going to happen in a situation like that, but you always have to factor in historical rivalries when handicapping, especially at the national level. But in regards to the Maginot Line, so the thing with that, as far as my research into why the defense of Belgium and the Flanders and the Low Countries failed. The British were betrayed by the former King of England, Edward VII, who had betrayed the battle plans to the Nazis, which is why he was banished to the Bahamas for World War II, is because they just didn't want him around. The Germans wanted him back in power if Operation Sea Lion had succeeded. So in regards to your question of the porous Maginot Line, the Maginot Line was actually a good idea. The French needed to point the guns forward next time. No, I'm kidding. No, it was actually a good idea, but their whole battle plan was betrayed by Edward VII, so it didn't work out. Multi-Face Ted asks, I used to enjoy writing, but scientific writing for grad school and publishing goals have killed that. Do you know of any light writing exercises to get the creative juices flowing? Bust procrastination blocks? No, I don't, unfortunately. Light writing exercises are not my thing. The only thing I know how to do is to keep writing. Writing sucks most of the time, and you just have to keep doing it. It's kind of one of those things that gets easier the more you do it, and it just takes a lot of repetitiveness to get good at it. And if you think you're good at it, you probably need more work. I think I can always get better, but it's one of those things that the more you do it, the easier it'll get, and you'll eventually stop hating it, or you'll get paid enough to stop hating it. Both are basically the same to me. Hunter S. Thompson would tell you, though, because I was thinking about your question. I remember in some of the stuff, literature I've read on him, and I have most of his books, he talks about sitting down at a typewriter and typing out chapter after chapter of The Great Gatsby. until he understood it, until he understood F. Scott Fitzgerald and the sentence structure. And he really, everyone's trying to be everybody else, and Thompson was trying to be Fitzgerald. So, I mean, if you want to be F. Scott Fitzgerald, you could sit down and just type out chapters of The Great Gatsby over and over again, like Hunter S. Thompson did, or you could find whatever book you like, type out chapters of that. But that doesn't sound fun to me. I'm just telling you what Hunter S. Thompson did to become a better writer, although I think he was also very talented to begin with. Cody asks, will the Pirates ever be able to compete under the current MLB economics? Probably not. That's the quick answer. The slightly longer answer is they've already done a good job establishing a solid core. The top four guys got Brian Hayes, O'Neill Cruz. I've talked about a lot by themselves. That's already a pretty solid half of a elite infield. And then you have Brian Reynolds, an MVP level player who's 27. He's probably going to get traded before their contender window is close to opening. And then they have Henry Davis, who they drafted last year. He's great too. I think he's catcher. At least he's going to start out at catcher. The problem is their pitching staff right now. Their number one pitcher is Jose Quintana, and that's not going to fly. And there's just no way to kind of fast track better pitching in Pittsburgh. So the only thing they could really do is emulate what the Angels did when they hired Perry Manassian this last year to be the general manager. If the Pirates have 20 draft picks in this next draft, they should probably take 20 pitchers. And then they should probably take 20 pitchers in the next draft after that. Then they'll probably be 5 years away from having a handful of pitchers ready to go at the major league level. So by then they're probably trading off these guys, and the cycle's going to repeat. So no, they aren't going to be able to compete unless they really go aggressive in free agency, and I don't see them doing that. I think the Pirates are more or less dead money for anything outside of individual player awards, and the only award I could see them being alive for this year is O'Neill Cruz for Rookie of the Year, which I've already talked about extensively this last couple days. Tom asks, what's a good price for Trey Turner to win MVP? So the first question is, who's best player on the Dodgers offense? Because to win the MVP, you have to be the best player on your own team. That would be either Mookie Betts or Trey Turner. I think 15-1 is probably a reasonable price for Turner. But so much competition at the top of the NL with Soto, Tatis, Harper, Acuna, and Betts, who's Turner's teammate. I'm not dying to bet 15. If you can get something closer to 20 or even 20, I think that's where I'd probably start wanting to take a shot on Turner. But like I said, that is such a crowded leaderboard of names to start at the top. Gerard Gaffney asks, I see that Wander Franco is 22-1 at my book to be AL MVP. I would be interested on hear my thoughts on that. I like it, but the risk here is that second-year guys, it's not impossible for them to make the jump to the MVP level, but it is hard to get votes for the MVP. Even Trout didn't get votes till his third season, didn't win. I think he got second in his second season. I grabbed some 35-1 early on Franco when in that number was at DraftKings, I think. I think there's other guys that have a better chance at breaking through versus top tier contenders like Bo Bichette maybe. It would take a lot for Wander to win. I am invested in it in the event that it does, but I'm not anticipating a win at MVP for Wander in his second year. Carlos Ustedes asks, long shot MLB stats leaders, home runs, RBIs, etc. Haven't looked a ton into those markets yet. Usually one of the last things I do, not one of the first. Alex Clark asks, what is your best NFL draft prop process, and what is the best source of actionable information? I kind of just follow stuff throughout the year and take notes when I see things that I think will come back to help me in the draft about players rising or falling, or who I think is, the number one player at whatever position. So my draft prep starts, and it's always an ongoing thing as the season's going on. But my process is different slightly, as it is, it's become different over the past couple of years because legal books have entered the draft prop market, and the offshores have kind of wised up and stopped offering the best props at the anything but the tiniest limits. So like back in 2020 when COVID hit, books were putting up offshore books were putting up draft props with nickel limits, and it was pretty great because you could get a couple $100 off on something like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, to be the first running back drafted at 22 or 25 to 1, or probably even higher than that. But this was the height of COVID in May or whatever, when everyone was watching Tiger King and there wasn't anything going on to bet besides some Nicaraguan basketball one or 2 days a week and some Belarusian soccer and the underground ping pong stuff that I never really got into. But it was the cash flow got cut off for a while, and all of a sudden getting a nice 22 to 1 hit all of a sudden right there was really great. But books have tightened up since then, and obviously that was Joey Knish on Twitter. If you know him, he was the dude behind that prop. It was pretty nice hit, like I said, for the lack of cash flow coming in at the time. That was awesome. But stuff like Circa started getting into the market recently and being more competitive with draft props, and like I bet Alex Leatherwood last year. I got that one right. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I nailed that, like just way over or under. And so like I have a couple guys that I'll think about betting when the odds go up. Circle will put up reasonable limits. I'm pretty confident in my scouting of Matt Corral. I'll talk about that more when those props go up. But as for the best source of information, as far as I know, Joey Knish is the guy on Twitter. He knows more about the draft than me these days. I used to care about the draft when I was in like college, and it kind of died out for me when I got into gambling, and I stopped paying attention to the draft as much. Now there's tons of people. I mean, there's no shortage of mock drafters and draft analyzers, and so I can rely on other people to feed me information in many cases. Mayar asks, he says, any advice you can give for managing mental health, work-life balance? For the past 8 months, sports betting is my second job, along with my full-time job as a broker. I'm struggling to find life balance. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Also, non-sports betting book recommendations would be greatly appreciated. Curious who the author of the KGB book on your bookshelf is. The KGB book is Christopher Andrew with Oleg Gordievsky, who is a former colonel in the KGB, who was the bureau chief in London, who defected in, I think, the 80s, but he had been a double agent for British intelligence since the late 60s. And that book behind me is actually, it's not a particularly good book. Not one of my favorite books on that shelf even. It just happens that using the Dewey Decimal System, unfortunately, the books are in the order they are, more or less. There's a couple that are out of order, but I tried to have it professionally organized, and it just happens that's where the KGB book is. It's just very prominent. It doesn't happen to be a particularly good book compared to everything up there. But good books that I'd recommend, I guess Men Who Stare at Goats was a book I read recently. It's better than the movie. Snowblind by Robert Sabag is great. Tom O'Neill's book Chaos about the Charlie Manson murders is very interesting if you're into that sort of stuff. I thought it was one of the better books I read. Aberration of the Heartland of the Real: The Secret Lives of Timothy McVeigh, written by Dr. Wendy Painting. She's an academic who is one of the few people who has access to the entire McVeigh case file. She's read everything. I mean, literally everything in it. And this is a thick book. It's right behind me. I don't know. It's like right. I'm kind of pointing at it right there, right next to Candy Jones' book, CIA and Candy Jones, and a bunch of CIA stuff right there. But yeah, it's that book right there. It's pretty thick. It's like 400 pages, a lot of source notes. But Wendy Painting is actual great academic, and she's invited on my show to talk about this book anytime she wants. But yeah, that's a good book if you're into 400-page books about the Oklahoma City bombing. I know most people aren't. I'm currently reading the 4-volume history of the Green Bay Packers. I banged out volume 3. I'm currently working my way back. Well, volume 1, 2, and then I'll do 4. Marcus Wolf's memoirs about being head of the Stasi for 34 years, called Man Without a Face, because nobody knew what he looked like. Nobody in the West knew what he looked like until 1978. For reference, he'd been head of the security ministry since 1952, so nobody had a picture of him for almost 26 years in the West. I've been stuck on this book, though, for like 6 months, and it's kind of like, I know how it ends. It's like Titanic. You know the Berlin Wall falls, and East Germany doesn't exist, so I just kind of haven't finished this book, and I'm really struggling. Normally, I don't struggle to finish books like this, but I really got to power through it because it is interesting. It just kind of feel like I know how it ends. And then based on your work-life balance situation, you might like the book Happy Hour is for Amateurs by the Philadelphia lawyer. It was written under a pseudonym. Good book. I liked it. I read it a long time ago. John Burgos asked, Jason, I find it odd that Wander Franco is widely a top 7-8 AL MVP candidate. Oddwise, however, the only season leader market I find him is the runs market. Doesn't this seem like a massive oversight? Also, I'm often not seeing a field option to play him by proxy. Thoughts? Yeah, it's probably an oversight, more or less. Probably something you could request at a book if you have, an actual, if you can go talk to somebody or, get in contact with a bookmaker at that book, they'll probably add him for you if you point that out. He's definitely a good candidate for the hits and runs market if he's at the top of the Rays lineup every day, which I expect he will be. Then Tin Mantis asks, I love to learn more about how you determine position sizing of certain long shots and futures bets, assuming being limited is not a deterrent. Yeah, it depends. I mean, for the most part, like he says, like betting a 101 outright winner in golf, how would your size differ when betting 150 to 1 or 20 to 1? Is it bet to win a certain amount or something different? Typically, I try to bet to win certain amounts when it comes to golf. So like, the 20 to 1, if it's to win 5,000, the 150 to 1 still might be also to win 5,000. Although I tend to go bigger on long shots, not like exponentially bigger, but like if I was betting, 20 to 1, if I was betting like 300 to win 6,000, 20 to 1, I might bet 200, or I might bet 150 on the 150 to 1, just because if I like the 150 to 1, it really depends what I think the edge is. If I think it should be 100 to 1 or 80 to 1 or 50 to 1 or whatever, I'll bet it more. But I guess it also depends if you're asking me about something like golf futures, which I would definitely bet to win the same amount. If I was betting to win 5,000, it would be, 20 to 1 to win 5,000, 150 to 1 to win 5,000, as opposed to like MLB player futures, where if there's a guy like at 150 to 1, like Juan Soto got up to 150 to 1, I would try to bet as much on that as I could if I was very confident in it, because, you're going to at worst get in a situation, if you get, I'm trying to think what's a reasonable number. I don't want to say like you got $5,000 at 150 to 1. You might be lucky to get $1,000 spread at 100 to 1 and 150 to 1. But it's still a lot of money. It's still a very lot of money on a guy like that. So if you do get the opportunity to bet, $500 or $1,000 on somebody at 150 to 1 and they end up second place, you always have the opportunity, if you're very confident that you're holding a second place guy, you could bet Bryce Harper at minus 500, minus 700, minus 1,000, and at least get some money back out of it. But to answer your question, determining position size on long shots and futures depends on if we're talking about player futures or NFL futures or weekly golf futures. I think for season long stuff, if you're confident that a guy has a serious chance at a big number, I'm not saying you need to go all in on it, but I typically will bet it until I force them to change the number. If it's at a legal book, if it's offshore, I just bet it for whatever the limit is, $100, $500, whatever I think I'm going to get paid. You also have to keep that in mind when betting at offshores, PPHs, that, outside of the bookmakers and pinnacles, some of these places can just tell you to piss off if you win too much money. So you always have to be careful with that. Frank Stein asks, have I talked about regular season home run leader market? I have not yet. It's kind of one of the things I do near the end of the preseason, not the beginning. Typically, I'm looking for guys to take shots on bad teams who bat near the top of lineups, get 500 plus at bats, but you're really looking, you're really looking at deep value and big numbers if you want to take on Vlad and Trout and Tatis. Those are not easy guys to beat in a season-long home run contest if they're healthy. Jay Hudnall asks, any under-the-radar prospects rookie cards that you think warrant an investment, like besides J-Rod, Cruz, or Dominguez? That's the Yankees, Jason Dominguez he's talking about. For investing rookie cards, they're probably too late for the most part. If you're thinking you're going to get value on guys this year, you're probably not. But Tristan Casas is a guy I think who's going to debate later this year, whose card is still undervalued. If you compare him to like Spencer Torkelson, I think it's like 80-20 that Torque has a better career. But it's not out of this world that Tristan Casas is just as good. Although I do think Torque is going to exceed expectations and be an elite, everyday first baseman. Mostly for prospects, though, you have to dig deeper. So you're looking at stuff like Andy Pages and Miguel Vargas types on the Dodgers, who are still a year away from being in the conversation. And then even guys like Marco Luciano and Jordan Walker, if you wanted to invest in them, there's still kind of like a little wiggle room, but those prices have already really skyrocketed, especially Jordan Walker. Then the final question is from Shep, who asks, any other podcast I'd recommend? He really enjoys the market value and logic-based approach, and is wondering if there's any other people that I take info from. Podcast-wise, I recommend Bet the Process with Rufus and Jeff, Rufus Peabody and Jeff Ma. I listen to most of those episodes. Brian Bolek's Bebo Knows, I listen to those. There's an archive of them. If you can find Brian Bolek on Twitter, he'll probably share it with you. I know Alan Boston had some episodes before he was, on VSiN and doing anything. They're very interesting because they're very raw. A lot of people have run through that show, a lot of very smart people. Then Brady Cannon and Wes Reynolds, who also have a podcast on VSiN called Long Shots. I listen to that each week. I'm not promoting it because it's on VSiN. I like listening to their golf takes. I think they have interesting guests, and they could break down golf very well. And Wes especially is very impressive. Not that Brady isn't, but I think watching Wes and listening to Wes, I think he's doing a really good golf stuff. That both of them are. So besides that, I don't really listen to a ton of sports podcast stuff during the week. Stuff comes up. I see it on Twitter. People send me stuff I'll listen to. But in general, I don't listen to much stuff other than, like I said, I consider Rufus and Jeff's thing like a professional development thing. Their guests are always interesting and very it's high level sort of conversation compared to who do you like this week, what are your favorite picks sort of stuff. That's my those are my questions and answers. Went about 45 minutes, so I hope you liked it. I hope I answered your question. I think I got every question that was asked one way or the other today. If I missed yours, just shoot me a message and I'll answer it on Twitter. So thanks for listening. I'll be back tomorrow and hopefully make some money on golf this weekend because I don't have much else going on.